On today's Apple Daily, we're answering your questions about the events that are coming up and about the products that are coming up, and we're talking about MacBooks, we're talking about iMacs, we're talking about iPhones, so we might as well get straight into it.
For the latest Apple news, rumors, and leaks, every weekday at 12 UTC, join us in the iCave.
I'm iCave Dave and I simplify Apple so that everything just works for you, and if you want the latest Apple news, leaks and rumours every weekday at 12 UTC, like this video, subscribe to the channel and ring the notification bell so you can join my notification squad, which nobody did yesterday, even though we had masses of new viewers. So if you want to join, all you do, like the video, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell, and then let me know in the comments using hashtag notification squad so that I can give you a shout out, because I like giving people shout outs. And on that topic, we are doing everything today in terms of answering your questions, because pretty much everything that I wanted to talk about has been asked today, so let's get on with it. We're going to group these up a little bit today. So first questions are going to be about Apple Silicon and Macs, and then we're going to move on to the other stuff about iPhones at the end. So if you're interested in iPhone stuff, stay tuned. But first up we have Souvik Mukherjee. What will be the major differences between the 14-inch M1X MacBook Pro and the 16-inch M1X MacBook Pro? Hashtag hit the subscribe button, hashtag make 5k. Yes, we're not far away from 5k now, so yeah, I would really appreciate the subs. But yeah, in terms of the differences that we're going to have between those two laptops, performance-wise, I don't think we're going to see anything at all. Just for context, the way that I think the range is going to look once these launch is we're still going to have the 13-inch MacBook Pro, which will have the M1 inside. Then we will have the 14-inch MacBook Pro, which will be the new style design. That will have the M1X, and the 16-inch will also have the M1X with the new design language. Those are the two that will also get the new ports. They will get your HDMI ports. They will get your SD card readers. I don't know if they're going to get a USB-A, but there's a possibility that they might, and they're going to have MagSafe charging. So other than the screen real estate, I really don't think we're going to have much of a difference. Obviously, the larger one will probably have a much better battery life as well. I don't know if they're going to go up to maybe a 4K display built into the larger one. That would be quite interesting if they were to go for that, because they've got to find a way now, assuming that they do go with the same processor in both, to justify the price difference. So maybe a 2560 by 1440 display on the smaller, and then the 4K display on the larger one. That could be a good way to differentiate. But in terms of other stuff that we've got in the pipeline for these, I think they may well come with that titanium body that we've been hearing a lot about. Rather than going for aluminium, maybe we're going to get titanium. Maybe that's one of the changes that we're going to get. I also think we might well get MagSafe built into the palm rests, in terms of like a larger glass palm rest where you can actually charge your iPhone or your AirPods on the palm rest when you're not using it. Obviously it's going to be a bit in the way, and we've heard as well that the touch bar is leaving us. So I think because we've also had the patent that we've seen for individually keycapped keys that can change their display, like having a small OLED display on each key, I think the chances are that the touch bar will be replaced by a function row that can be customized like the touch bar. So I don't think they're taking away the touch bar and just giving us back regular keys. I think they're taking away the touch bar and giving us back keys that we can press that also have different stuff appear on them. So you could actually have like an emoji row, or you could have whatever you want there, and it can still be specific to your apps. The one thing that it won't work as well for is things like Final Cut Pro, having your timeline on there to scrub through. But little sacrifice, but I think it would be a cool experience. Now the patent says that it could be for the entire keyboard, but I think that they will start maybe with that function key row, and then at a later date, assuming it all works well, they can work out any kinks, they can actually put it across the whole display, and that way if you're going internationally or you want to sell these in any country, the whole keyboard can change. One of the big features when iPhone was brought out, Steve Jobs pointed out that those keys at the bottom of the keyboard are there whether you need them or not. So why not have your keys adjust to the apps that you're in? Second question from Souvik Mukherjee. iCave answers, how many years, according to you, will heavy MacBook Pro users be able to run their M1 or M1X or M2 smoothly? In other words, how often would you recommend an upgrade? Hit the subscribe button, make 5k. We've talked in the last couple of shows about how many people are still using older Macs, like way back to 2007, 2009 stuff, even earlier than that, PowerPC stuff. But they're not kind of considered a useful computer as such anymore, not in terms of the whole range of stuff that they would have done in the first place. But with these M1s, I think we can at least expect 5 to 7 years of software support, probably 7 years of software support, which in general will kind of give you an indication of how long Apple thinks they will be useful. But actually, I think these things are going to be quite usable for a long time beyond that. The only concern that I would have is actually the paradigm of computing changing completely. So at the moment we have computers, we have tablets, we have phones, and the phone is becoming quite rapidly the most used computer that we have. It's not... The vast majority of people spend a lot more time on their phones than they do on something like this. It's a little bit of a difficult thing to kind of predict how long they're going to be useful for, because it may be that we actually as a society move away from the kind of form factor of computing that we have right now and more towards, we have the AR glasses that we've got on the horizon, we have virtual reality. Either of those could quite easily take over a lot of computing time, so how useful they are might not be based on how well the hardware runs, but on how we use computers in the future. That being said, I don't see these things clogging up, especially when you look at things like the MacBook Air. It doesn't have any fans, it doesn't have any moving parts, so it should actually perform exactly as it does now all the way through. It just depends how much more demanding the programs get, more than anything else. But I think quite easily 6 to 7 years will not be a problem at all, and with my iMac 2013, I was still using that up until this Mac Mini arriving this year. So, Apple stuff stays very relevant for quite a long time. Next up, Phil Rosa-Leeke asks, iCave answers, David, with all the hype with the new upcoming MacBook Pros, in your honest opinion, what do you think the chances are of Apple also upgrading the MacBook Airs? Do you think that they will add extra ports like it's expected with the new MacBook Pros? Okay, so we can actually kind of extrapolate a lot of this from what's on Apple's website right now. When Apple released the M1 computers, the MacBook Pro and the Mac Mini, it replaced the base level configurations of those computers, but you can still buy the kind of higher end, technically higher end, Intel configurations if that's what you want to do. Because those are also the ones that had the more ports and would support more displays, all that kind of thing. Now, I should point out that the M1 MacBook Air and Mac Mini and MacBook Pro all completely outperform anything else in their categories. The only stuff that performs better than them at the moment is a couple of iMacs and the Mac Pros, and even that's only on certain benchmarks. But the difference with the MacBook Air is that they completely replace the whole MacBook Air range with M1s, which suggests to me that they are not replacing that until we at least get to the M2s, which will be the kind of natural evolution rather than a higher end model within the same range, if that makes sense. So that will be next year's version, whereas the MacBook Pros that we've got coming out, the 14 and the 16-inch, replacing the higher spec versions of the MacBook Pros that we had previously. That's why I think the 13-inch will stay around. So I don't think they will be adding extra ports, certainly not at this half of the year. Maybe if towards the end of the year they do actually do a redesign of MacBook Air, it might get a couple of extra ports. I can't imagine that it's going to get the full range. I believe I've seen online rumours that it is at least getting the MagSafe adapter, and then you would still have your 2 USB-C ports. I don't know about anything else though. Could potentially get an SD card reader. Can't imagine it getting an HDMI port. Unless they put on one of those HDMI minis. I don't know. Doug Willis asks, iCave answers, if M1X processors are released in March or April, I would have thought the most obvious release would be an M1X Mac Mini. Will be disappointed if it's not updated. And yeah, that's actually a really good point, and something that I hadn't been kind of talking about until now. I know we have mentioned it on the show a couple of times, but the Space Grey Mac Minis, the higher end Intel models, are still there on Apple's website. I would not be surprised if they start to disappear in the next week or so as well, because there's no reason they couldn't put out an M1 Mac Mini. That would be your headless desktop, which will go alongside the iMacs as soon as they come. I have had a little bit of a change of heart as well in terms of when I think stuff's coming, since yesterday, just from the other things that have been going on, and looking back, I've been watching a bit more of the keynotes and things in the last couple of days too. But actually, because Apple's released, I think, what will be all of the M1 Macs in one day, I think that we are going to get the MacBook Pros and the iMacs and this uprated Mac Mini, again, on the same day. So we will get probably this April event that we're speculating on at the moment. The one that we've got semi-confirmation on is the March 23rd. That's the one that John Prosser and Kang have both kind of confirmed from their own sides. And that will get official confirmation, assuming it's real, next Tuesday from Apple, most likely, when they send out invites, and then we get the hash flags coming up on Twitter, and we get all of that kind of cool stuff. The April event, we're not going to know if that's even coming for probably another month. It's probably going to be towards the end of April, I would guess, beginning of May, and then Apple can then dominate the news cycle again for the most of May, with people reviewing and talking about these incredible new Macs, and then you get straight into WWDC. We see what they're going to be doing next year, and the whole process starts again. But yes, I do think we will see an M1X Mac Mini. It would be really cool if they came in the same colours that the iMacs are reported to be coming in, and maybe that the MacBooks are reported to be coming in. But regardless, I do think we will be getting more powerful Mac Minis. Yes, there's plenty of room inside anyway. And moving on to a couple of questions about the iPhones as well. Rico the MLG PRO asks, iCave answers, do you think Apple will make an iPhone with the design of the 12 but it has a home button and bezels, because eventually the iPhone SE will use the notch design and they can call it the iPhone Classic, like what they did with the iPod Classic, where the older design but better specs? No, I don't think they're going to do that. So I guess what you're asking about there is, will they take what is now the iPhone SE, but which is based on the iPhone 6, 7, 8 kind of generation design, but give it flat sides, but still have the home button and the bezels top and bottom? I don't think they'll do that. I don't think they would redesign the casing, because that doesn't actually matter to them. That's not an important part of kind of what the phone is. The important part for these phones is that it has the home button and it has the bezels and that kind of classic iPhone design. That is a really good point. Calling it an iPhone Classic would be great, because that also kind of ties back to the Macintosh Classic, which also had a version called the Macintosh SE, incidentally. But no, I don't think that they're going to go to that design. We've had the iPhone 5, we've had the 5S, we had the 4 in the past, you know, that had that kind of design language. If they wanted to, I guess they could, but I think it would make far more sense if they were to either repurpose the case from the iPhone XR and put in an A14 early this year, if they were going to make an SE this year, but it doesn't look like they're going to. It looks like it will probably be next year before we get a new SE, and it will have the A15. I think they're going to release an SE every couple of years, because the whole point of the SE is it's for people that are not bothered about being kind of cutting edge. They just want something that works well. And Joe asks, hashtag iCave answers, if 120Hz doesn't happen on the iPhone 13/12s, what will be your reaction? For one, I'll go crazy. Now, first of all, we need to understand that the iPhone 12 not having 120Hz refresh rate is not because Apple made a choice not to put it there. It's because nobody could actually supply physically enough OLED panels that have that refresh rate, that were of high enough quality that Apple could use them in the phones. The difference between all of these Android manufacturers who do like their flagship version with 120Hz, or they do, you know, all of these different designs, is that nobody in the Android space is selling volume of those phones in the way that Apple does. So when Apple is creating something, they need to be able to get their hands on tens of millions of every component that goes into these products. Makes it very much different to these companies, where they will have a whole bunch of different phone designs, and some will be LED and some will be OLED and some will be high refresh rate and some will be projected on the side of a van or something. I don't know, but you know what I mean. They're not all the same. They don't have an entire range that would all need the same thing, and admittedly this would only be going into the Pro iPhones to begin with, at least, but it's still a huge amount of displays, and I think the iPhone 12 Pro was almost the biggest seller, if not the biggest seller this year. In some markets, the iPhone 12 Pro Max is the biggest seller, which is just insane. That's the one that I've got, and this is not a phone for everyone. This is a phone that is like, if you are really into it and you really want to use the high-end Pro RAW photography and you want to do really great video that's stabilized and things like that, which, you know, if you want to do the HDR at 60 frames a second, that's the kind of people that this phone is designed for. It's kind of pitched to, and it's kind of overkill for people that aren't making content in a kind of regular way, at least. Professional is a a sketchy word for me to use when I'm talking about my own videos. I think one of the big things that people don't realise is that it wasn't Apple chose not to do it, it's that they couldn't get enough displays to do it even if they wanted to. I'm pretty sure that they will be able to do it this year, but my reaction if they don't will be, oh, because I don't care about 120 Hz. It makes almost no difference, and it just puts more strain on your processor, so I'm not a fan. But if you've got a question you want answering, hashtag iCave answers down in the comments. Leave me your questions so that I can answer them for you. We might make some into shorts if they're going to be like super interesting on their own. We might just put them all in the main show. If you're not subscribed as well, I know actually we have a crazy high proportion of people that are. It's about 40% of our video views come from people that are subscribed. But that still leaves 60% of you guys, John, that aren't subscribed, so get on with it. Press the button. Thanks. See you in the next one.